Welcome back, everybody. Episode 48 of the Leonis Report. JB and I, a couple days late. I mentioned it very briefly. We had done this recording, I think, on Thursday, and lo and behold, I had an audio setting all messed up. We spent an hour and a half recording. None of it got captured from JB's microphone, and so here we are instead recapping. But back to normal. How's the weekend going for you, man?
Went pretty good. Got plenty of family time this weekend. So played a little baseball this today with my son, getting ready for the spring season with him. And yeah, it was we had a bit of rain yesterday, so it wasn't the greatest day yesterday. Went to the movies also. Caught the
Nice.
new Kung Fu Panda movie.
Oh, right on, right on.
So it was a good family weekend. How about you?
Perfect. Honestly, not much. Just catching up on sleep and a lot of Genshin Impact and a little bit of Overwatch and a little bit of chores and pretty standard. Just like counting down the days till spring. And my birthday's actually this week, so this weekend trying to get some plans going, see what happens for that.
Very nice, very nice.
But no,
Hopefully we get something good this week and
that'd
make
be
it a real
nice.
celebration.
It definitely would because yeah, we'll get there. We'll quickly talk about the lineup tonight. It's going to be the Fang Vision card we'll pop off with, which is the main highlight of content coming in. The limit break upgrades they've announced. We'll talk about the global anniversary tickets that are coming in. But the main thing is a new segment that JB came up with a couple weeks ago. We talked about this. Iteratively going through and basically recapping like a state of the game in each segment of the game. So it's PVE, PvP, unit building, whatever concept we want. We'll go through it, and tonight's PvE specifically, we'll run through all the different aspects of PvE. We'll talk about things we like and don't like, kind of give it a grade and a thumbs up, thumbs down. But very interesting idea. It's something we don't talk about often, but the game's been out long enough. But yeah, I know you're excited to talk about this.
Yeah, just kind of give some constructive criticism, and hopefully if somebody out there in Gumi is listening, maybe it can get passed on to the dev team. Maybe kind of give them some feedback that they haven't heard in a while, maybe from the global side, or at least not regularly, about some of these more fringe modes of the game that don't get talked about that often. And we kind of give kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down where we kind of think are the good points today. Maybe talk about a little bit where we think it could improve and get better, and kind of take it like that.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, we've been playing since day one, every single day, and we're old tactics vets, we're old gotcha vets from FFBE. And I know our criticisms and feedback and positivity and the good things we say will likely be hopefully rooted in like what's realistic too. I know there's a lot of people that want to see changes in the game, and some of the suggestions just they're either not in line with the gotcha model or maybe it's too much of a development lift. So we'll do our best to kind of toe that line, but we'll get into at least the new content coming this week, and primarily is the Fang Vision card, which is a brand new Holo VC being released into the game. I know you've had this up for a couple of weeks now. I'll let you kind of talk high level if you want about it. What do you like about this Vision card?
So first and foremost, I always love these cards more when they're coming in with 4 job groups. Always going to be packed with units on there, and you can see that here on this card, particularly for lightning and earth. They're kind of leading the pack here in terms of pure number of units. And of course, this is kind of centered around Fang. So, several of some of the better lightning units. Unfortunately, Alaya is not on there. Astrius is not on there, but do have some other good ones that we don't see quite as often, like Lightning and Summer Helena and a couple others. But I really do love that bestowed effect on there with the area resist. Got some agility on there as well, and thankfully the Spear group in particular is one of the groups that does have that vision card economy with the Full Metal Alchemist card, that they're able to pull this into that primary slot and get full benefit out of it. I love seeing that accuracy on there, the human killer reaction block. Really nice offensive set of effects there. And then, of course, the all-new Guild War effect here. This is a Guild War holo card, and you're getting that magical mitigation, depending on the size of the area of effect. 12%, so pretty nice bonus there on top.
Yeah, definitely. This is an exceptional vision card. You're right. Spear is a unique group that Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood card. That is a game changer that it allows you for a free third slot to put whatever you'd like. And this is a primo card to consider there. But it also is for the Sword Knight group as well, which has the Melnia Vision card in their kit. So they technically are a group that also has a free one. I particularly like this because, it obviously has reaction block, which is one of our top, at this point, top 3 or 4 favorite things to be stacking in there. The accuracy, though, we talked about this Wing Stearns upgrade, I think a week or two ago, where one of the nice things about accuracy here, a lot of our spear teams currently, we are equipping them with like an Odin Esper or an Alex Ring or a Luck Trust set, and you can now forego maybe the Luck Truststone set and go for the HP and bulk them up a little more now that you have the accuracy in the main slot. So it's just one of those things that adds into their kit of giving them some durability, because now you can offset that with the accuracy. And they don't have any vision cards currently that hit that accuracy checkbox in terms of adding to it. So yeah, in addition, obviously the Human Killer, you get that universal mod. The Bestowed is great. And yeah, Guild War effect is immediately something that you keep an eye on. And for, again, Spear Group in particular, they are skewing a little more on the bulkier side. Not all of them, to be honest. That's kind of a mischaracterization. But, for some of the top tier Spear units, this is a big time bulk increase for them, that you don't have to rely on some of the magic res like you maybe did, so you can sacrifice it for something else. But overall, nothing but good things to say about this card. I love who they decided to put on it too. But yeah, definitely pulling for it.
You think about back to that point about the vision card economy. You think about the Knight group. That's another one that they really have that as well. So, even if you're not a big spear player, this can be a good card for some of those other jobs as well.
Yep, 100% spot on. But yep, I don't know what else to say other than I'm pulling for it. It's gonna be very good. It's a great card for Fang, who I know her accuracy could use a little bit of help. The fact that this goes in here really solidifies one of her, I won't call it a weakness, but it's something that you need to be cognizant of. And this, nothing you want to take her into the matchup with 2B. But in a spear group, you'd be surprised. She actually holds up half decent. But yeah, other than that, we really don't have much in terms of like new content coming into the game, other than a couple limit break upgrades here. And we'll go through each one of them individually. And I'll kick off the one that I think likely is going to have some of the highest impact. And that's the Veritas of the Heavens, the wind spear oriented unit that, he's a fantastic unit as is, regardless of not having that limit break. But what they're giving him here is a triple hit ability. It will increase the modifier by 60 from 200 to 260 if he has haste applied, and he does have haste on one of his buffs, so it is very likely this does apply. And it's a nice, thick, healthy 20% regen for 3 turns. And I'll let you speak more to this, but I know there's something you brought up recently where a lot of the regen upgrades are in the 10% range. I know Snow's is on the limit break, and you were lamenting the lack of 20%. You want to talk more about that here for Veritas of the Heavens?
Yeah, I mean, this it doesn't blow me away, I'll say, like in terms of the effect, but it's nice. It's got a large mod on there. The 3 hits obviously is super nice, especially when you think about that win team and kind of the chains they can rip off with Glassy and Dario, both also having access to 3-hit chains as well. And when those modifiers get sort of ramped up, like the damage output just gets absolutely crazy, like enough that they can actually overcome even mono ice teams. I've absolutely seen it multiple times at this point. So that obviously is very strong. And yeah, like you said, the 20% health. You think about, Veritas, he's very tanky at the very beginning of the battle, where he might be having, the Maximilian armor giving him that 10% booster survivability when he's above 50%. He's got that 50% barrier as well. You find though that, after he kind of hits that 50% mark, he usually dies on the next hit. Like he's, once that barrier is gone, not as good. So obviously getting that sustain in there, the regen, that's going to help his survivability a little bit too. Maybe even, get you a better second hit in Guild War too, potentially.
Yeah, completely agreed. Because, Young Eld is a great spear unit that can regenerate enough health that you'd be healthy enough for a second fight. This might be the kind of thing that does it as well, because of the timing of when this limit break will normally happen. That if you look at the main job, his 2 main abilities here, that he will still prioritize these over the limit break because of the Imperil will likely do more damage, just on average, but maybe not. But even the Dispel, a lot of times if you can dispel certain buffs, it'll break that damage formula. But both of these are technically longer range, and they're AoE, so they encapsulate a larger area, so it's more likely that the AI will calculate more damage using them, which means by the time the limit break is time to be used, it'll be a little more in the mid fight where he will have started to lose some health. I know one of the big problems with the regen typically is that characters will use it when they're at full health. So the end of turn 1, they'll regen health when they're already at full health. This likely won't be the case for him. It's a very clutch timing that I think will end up, again, maybe not making a huge impact, but enough that it's it's definitely more material than nothing, particularly when you consider healing power. If you can bump that to 28% with the defensive spirit stones and the trust stone passive. But yeah, the chain capping too, very important. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yep. But we'll keep going through a lot of these others. There's a couple units here that haven't seen the light of day in a little while. Kilphe is one of them as the Earth unit. She already had a pretty stellar limit break upgrade a little while ago where she's always had that magic res and peril of 38%. They'd given her a double cast and it was a dispel re-raise. That was already in the kit, but the newest iteration of this is that it decreases defense pen for 3 turns and slash res pen for 3 turns, both by 30%. Also gives herself courage while also drastically changing the size of the limit break, whereas formerly this dinky little 2-square ability, now you have a lot more flexibility. Excellent survivability for her, where she is a defense-oriented unit. You want to talk a little bit about her defense stats?
Yeah, I mean, she has some that she got on her Dream Awakening, I believe, and she basically is walking in at 30 defense before you even look at her passives. So, throw on the 12 defense passive potentially, you get to 42. Maybe you're looking at a survival vest and some other things. She's got a 20 defense buff. Very easy for this unit to, be approaching 100 plus defense, when buffs are accounted for. So, having that access to the defense penetration debuff is very nice. I do like that slash resistance penetration, on there as well. Also kind of a nice bonus. Obviously the courage. So very nice survivability, upgrade for her. I do like the offensive side of it too, because this does give her that longer range, like you mentioned. That's always been a huge problem for her within her main kit. Her range is topping out in that 2 to 3 zone. And, unless you kind of go into the sub jobs for Holy or Taunting Spell or something of that nature. So this is nice. Of course, the 46 AP is tough on her because, that's one of her other issues. I think she's a 50% AP unit.
Good call out.
But yeah, I think at the end of the day, this isn't going to be bringing her back into the meta or anything like that. But maybe a unit that you can look to for some lower cost situations, or maybe as like an elemental counter or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. Nothing else to add there. Good limit break. Just not much for a good unit. But we'll keep moving along here to Howlet, the original Howlet. And his limit break upgrade has always been great for PvE content with that 38% wind imperil. This one is also getting a pretty drastic range increase, whereas formerly the 3 squares away, now you're getting upwards of 5. So a nice, 2-square adjustment. It's a mirage barrier, kind of like last wall. That's a reduction of all damage for one time. It can be broken though, because it does count as a barrier, but it's also a bravery decrease of 25. This one, I get what they're going for. He's a pretty fragile unit overall, that you get this one get out of jail free card, but then again, because of the amount of barrier break in the game, because this applies to those rules, it can be easily countered. It is still a single target ability, so even the bravery decrease, although that's a nice 25-ish% damage reduction overall from what you might normally get, probably not enough to let him live longer than a hit anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it happening, especially when you think about the top damage dealers being used right now, like your Helenas, your A2s, your Elias, all very much have this unit in one-shot range, just because he doesn't really have any innate defenses. Decent enough limit burst. I don't think it's got quite as good of a treatment as Kilphe's did. I think that in a vacuum, hers definitely got more love than this one, but it's decent enough. He's still a pretty good PvE unit because he does have this wind imperil here. And I believe he does have a 2-hit attack somewhere, if I remember correct. Yeah, his job 25. So yeah, I mean, he can potentially fill in, as kind of a PvE guild raid chainer. So yeah, he's okay.
That's his spot. But finally, probably the most closest to what we see usable in the game is Resnick, who, that lightning team has gone through several iterations over time. And although it's changed, she's still, I think, one of the better pure healers in the game. And so her limit break has always been kind of like a heal oriented limit break, where it would apply the healing. It's also a dispel debuffs, but they're doing something very smart here with it, that they're flipping the order of the text, which means you will dispel debuffs first and then heal. And you'd famously point this out for Halloween Leela, who got an upgrade back then, where we realized that when you dispel debuffs, that includes things like healing power down. So when you talk about a limit break like this, prior if someone had healing power down, it would be affecting the potency, but no longer because you can dispel that ahead of time. It's also getting that second cast of the Ayaka treatment. So I do like this a lot because she's a very single target oriented healer. This gives her a very nice high burst. Second one, I think it's a great limit break for what she is as a unit.
Yeah. You think about especially like that devout team, and there's so much healing on it. This Resnick kind of fits into that team very, very well, giving handing out barriers potentially to uh Amnelis. It could be a nice play. And yeah, we've seen it in the past with Halloween Leela. She was, like you said, kind of the one of the first ones to get this. We looked at this back a few months ago. And the value in kind of getting rid of not only like every debuff, but specifically when it comes to Resnick, the healing power down, you can't really discount that enough. So I think this is good. I don't think that it's going to really put her back into the picture as like the top healer in the game, but I think that she's a compelling choice, depending on the situation.
Yep, definitely. And I've come to the point that you can't ignore 310 mod. The healing pool, the health pools, HP pools in the game right now are so large that healing can be kind of difficult sometimes to really like get an appropriate amount of healing for wasting a whole turn. I remember being very happy and kind of underrated with Renoa's limit or modifier on her healing abilities, where those are also naturally very high. That seeing this amount being able to be used twice in this large AOE, definitely two thumbs up. But that's really all we have for like pure content coming out. I mean, technically, we did get an announcement in the game. We are getting on the topic of PVE, which we'll talk about in depth. The Festival of the Kill, which is again one of those like PVE oriented contents that's geared toward getting high scores. These have been decently well received in the past. It's nice to at least have something else to work on throughout the week. I know you'll likely be tinkering a heck of a lot, time permitting, in that as well.
It sounds a little bit like the one that's ran during Final Fantasy IX, or at least somewhat similar, but it does seem to have like some new mechanics with. I don't recall that Final Fantasy IX Master of the Hunt had like overkill kind of things and like bonuses for certain, damage types and things like that. So it seems like it's got a little bit different twist on it, but I think similar idea.
Yeah.
Obviously, much better rewards this time around. You can potentially earn 6K Visior there, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, definitely very nice. And the only other thing coming out is the announcement that we're getting some tickets for Viz expenditure, at least in the gacha system. We don't know about if your shop spending counts toward it or not, but
I think this one they said specifically was shop spending. I think the last time around, I thought it was gacha, and then this time it looks like they're rewarding the shop purchases.
Love it. I mean, these tickets were really well received last time in the Road to Worldwide. It was one of the presents they'd, given us. To be fair, they'd also given it to JP, so I know we had some bones to pick about the way they presented it back then. But this is certainly nice. It's an opportunity to get more Mog Shop medals. I know for veterans, it's a great way to get a lot of duplicate things, which those Mog medals then buy more shards and this and that. You get to reinvest it into your account. I'm happy with it personally, knowing that we still have a whole other week till the anniversary to really like see what they might roll out for some packs and discounts and deals and whatnot.
Kind of speaking of the Road to Worldwide, I was thinking about this kind of second go around of tickets here and kind of thinking back on that. And like you said, we liked that we had it, but at the same time, it was something, like you said, it was repackaged, anniversary content from JP. So the fact that we got that back then, I was actually combing through JP. I haven't seen that they've gotten this second edition of it. And I was kind of, if it doesn't come to pass on JP that they get a second one, and we do, that does have me thinking a little bit differently about that Road to Worldwide where we got the bonus tickets. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. Maybe they end up getting it too, but something to think about here kind of in the weeks ahead. It does kind of, make you think about it a little bit differently. Like I said,
yeah, definitely. It was so long ago, and it went on for so long. I don't even think we were prisoners of the moment. You can't be a prisoner of the moment for something that goes on for like 3 months.
Yeah.
but no, we will pivot here to our state of the game, where we'll again go through every single type of PvE content. We're going to touch on a couple topics that are kind of consistent. We'll talk about grading if they're challenging or fun, the story quality, the rewards. We'll try to talk about how to improve, kind of give an overall grade. and just really kind of share our thoughts. Obviously, in the comment section, feel free to like thumbs up, thumbs down if you agree or disagree. What are the things we might have missed? What do you think we should be improving with? Because with any hope, again, it just could be the kind of thing that Justin takes a couple screenshots of, just emails it to a team, and maybe the developer's like, hey, this is like an easy change, and who knows the trickle down effect of it. But
Yep.
we'll start with the main story, and I'll let you kind of kick off with everything: challenging, fun, story quality, rewards. What are your thoughts on the main story for PVE content?
So I mean, the challenge and fun factor really isn't there. You know, it's very easy. You can complete it with basic units, and that's probably really how it should be. You know, it should be new player friendly. So I don't really mind it so much from that. But and we've kind of talked a little bit about this before, you and I, that it would be nice though to maybe have like once in a while have like a kind of a grandiose mission, or um, maybe at the end of a chapter that kind of makes it a little bit more interesting. Very early on in the story, there was also some environmental kind of effects that were teased that really never came to fruition. Like you could kind of knock over one tree, you could maybe step on some buttons here and there. They never really kind of added on to that and really did too much with it over the course of, even within like the weekly content, it's really nowhere to be seen. So, um, I think things like that might make it a little bit more interesting. But at the end of the day, I do think that it's it shouldn't really be super hard for new players necessarily. Um, the other thing though is when you think about the story from just the actual characters and the actual content of the story itself. Very early on, I didn't really enjoy it that much. I was skipping a lot of it. That kind of the first story there was very tropey, and a lot of the characters were very boring, I would say, and not super interesting to me as kind of a more mature person. But I think that as the time has gone on and we've gotten to know the characters more story beats have dropped. It has become, I think, one of the better assets for the game. I think the story has very much improved. I've been very invested in a lot of the characters. Um, yeah, and I think that from that standpoint, the actual content of the story is very good.
Yeah, I totally agree. The actual, difficulty and the gameplay of it is probably a thumbs down. It's very, very easy. I'm totally on board though with that like 10th stage every chapter. If you were to have like a nightmare difficulty of it and completely optional, you don't need to complete it to move on. But it's a kind of thing that, when I think back to the original tactics, each stage in story mode did have kind of like some kind of longer difficulty. It felt like you had to manual it. And the current main story, there's really no need to manual it other than satisfying the challenge of like triple hitting to clear the stage of 4 stars. There's really, it's just an
Yeah.
auto and put the phone down and look somewhere else. But I do agree that the story and the lore has gotten so much better. I will say I'm ready for them, and I actually think this is something that needs to be improved because they did so good the last year. The last like 5 months, the Realm Scourge is very tired to me at this point. All the PVE content is just, oh, the Realm Scourge is here, oh, it's here, oh, it's here, oh, it's coming, and it's like, and it's the same story. It just goes to a different set of characters to repeat the same script for the same 6 months. And more than anything, we don't have anything beyond it at this time. Not even in JP as a tease. So to me, like they've stopped the world building. There's no new characters being introduced. There's no other regions. There's no really anything. And so to me, the game is getting a little bit smaller and a little bit more contained. But like Sadali and Gilgamesh, that flashback had me completely invested. And obviously, like the whole Mornblade thing, all of a sudden there's like these 6 blades that are going around. But it's kind of slowed down a little too much for me. And it's tough to be terribly optimistic knowing that they haven't really done anything to seemingly set up any kind of future chapters. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems very obvious at this point that they've been stalling here for some time. Um, but yeah, hopefully that kind of getting into some of these other side stories and things has given them time to invest into that main story and maybe whatever happens next after it.
Yeah. No, totally. A small side thing. I do think they just recently teased something with Melnia and the Simulacra and the whole her little. She's kind of like a machina. I don't. She's not really, but it's something odd. If I remember, there's something with Amulet that she has something similar that. Um, I think they have slightly set it up a little bit, but we'll know more once they connect the dots in that for us. But overall,
Yep.
I think you've given the main story a B plus, and I generally agree with that. The rewards are fine. The story quality is good. the challenge and fun is not there. It could be there, but it's not. That's really, I think in a nutshell.
Yeah, 100%.
But that brings us to another story, which is another kind of mainline PVE content from a storytelling perspective. And I'll kick this one off. I mean, I know it's the same idea. The challenge and the fun is thumbs down. It's audible. It's stupidly simple. There's really nothing there to sink your teeth into. To me, where this falls short to the main story is that the story quality is not nearly there. It's very boring, very mundane. And even though the newer ones have been a lot more interesting with the Ashen Warriors and that whole twist on things, the first two were so heavy that it really became, I would skip cutscenes. It became very boring and was very welcomed at first how they like changed the presentation of like the character art, the text, but it became very boring to watch after a while. Where at least the main story has animated cutscenes that another story has just never landed for me. And so when you consider that the challenge isn't there, the fun's not there, the rewards are pedestrian, the story quality's not there, it's I'm ready for them to move on to it because they haven't connected it yet to the main story, which to me would really be a strong exclamation point. But another story is a big swing and a miss for me personally.
I agree. I think it got off, the first couple of chapters, it was very stuff you've seen before, like again, very tropey, and the Lucio in particular. I personally don't really enjoy that particular JRPG trope of kind of this fledgling warrior and very newbie in every aspect, and him kind of ascending. Um, it is what it is. Maybe some people do enjoy that, but I think that the most recent one has been a little bit more interesting. I have liked this kind of Ashen story that they've been doing with this alternate universe. Um, it will be a bit of a swing and a miss for me though if they don't, end up tying it into the world somehow and into the main story. I really hope that they do. I guess we'll see what happens here as it kind of concludes, But in terms of like the characters and units themselves, though, I think that those are a home run. Like I think that aesthetically, all the pretty much all the characters are really cool to look at, and several of them are some of my favorites in the game.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. So I know we've tentatively given this like a B minus, but it's probably even lower for me just because the quality of the story is such a swing and a miss. If I'm skipping it after all this time still, and I'm really there's really nothing there, it's hard for me to say that it's like a thumbs up because I obviously wouldn't recommend it. It's like a new player to be like, oh, another story. Like, yeah, you should play this game because of it. Like that's not something I would ever say. You know what I mean?
Especially when you think about it, like from the PVE challenge and fun standpoint, that really hasn't been there outside of one thing, which I will give them a lot of credit for, which is the Lucio quest line, which I think is a home run for them. Not only are you getting like a really nice free unit out of it, probably the best 80 cost unit in the game. Like if you were to compare what he is able to do versus others, you get equipment for him, you get the resources to fully reincarnate him, which is a huge boost to his power. And the missions are actually, they have some challenge and nuance to them, and I thought that they were pretty fun, especially as you kind of get later into them. So I think those have been very well received, I think, from most people that I've talked to.
Totally agreed. You're right. Those extra stages where it's like him versus the other warriors, like Astrius, and there were certain win conditions. There were some that actually were very challenging to me. That you did need a specific Esper and a certain turn rotation, and definitely thumbs up. It was nice. Yeah.
Yep.
But that brings us now to our collaboration events, which we're in one right now with Final Fantasy 13. I'll let you start here if you want to talk about everything: the collab choices, frequency, the event quality, etc.
So in terms of the frequency of the events, I think that at this point we tend to get them like maybe every 4 months, maybe 3 months. We'll have one. I think that's fine. I think anymore it might start to seem too much where we're getting too many limited units. And I know as it is, it's already a lot for maybe for lighter spenders and free to play that's kind of want to invest in some of their favorites here. But in terms of like the duration of the event, I think that once they went to that kind of 2 month time frame, I think that I've been a big fan of it. It gives you a long time to kind of get free shards from like from the Chocobo events and other free sources that are there. So that I think has been a nice change. Obviously, like from a PVE challenge standpoint, not really too much going on in terms of like the weekly content, and there's not really much there. I think that one of my biggest disappointments has been kind of the hollow factor to these events, where there's not really anything going on in terms of like, the main characters kind of uh involving themselves within those collabed worlds like you might see in other gotcha games out there. And the events themselves, other than having like maybe some cool maps that are there, there's really not a lot to it in terms of like a story event that kind of is a big celebration of those games coming into to War of the Visions. So that I think there has been a couple of examples of them doing it right, which was the Dragon Quest one in particular. You think about that, those slime missions, a lot of similarities to the Lucio,
Yeah.
what they did with Lucio as well. You're kind of building the character up over time. That I think was very well done, and the story was very cute, and um, I wish that we would see more of that as some of these other big properties came into the game.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I agree with the frequency and the duration. I actually do like how long they keep it in here. The collab choices I'm also happy with. Obviously, every Final Fantasy is very welcome, Tactics in particular, but certainly all these other name brand Final Fantasy games, it's nice to have these units come in. I know it's been kind of underwhelming with some of the releases where they haven't been top tier units. That has disappointed and disenfranchised a couple. I know some people that are actually very upset with the quality of some of their favorite characters coming in and how they just don't even compete, if you know what I mean. But we've talked about this too. That I do think we like their approach to limited characters of not making too many of them OP, because you do want people that come into the game to be able to use the normal pool and the tickets you can get from them to acquire shards and potentially reincarnate them. The limited units are handcuffed by the fact that they are limited to get the shards in that time period. So from a balance perspective, I like what they do overall with that. The vision cards have been fantastic. So I'm at the very least, I do think it's a home run of the quality of vision cards for the most part. But the biggest thumbs down, I completely agree with you, is the depth of the event. That, sure, they'll change the music in the background to some theme song. Like, okay, that's nice, I guess. But like even right now, we're playing the Final Fantasy 13 event, and the home screen background is Leonis Castle. Like it's just, there's nothing. I do agree that they do a good job with the stages and the enemies in terms of designing them to be from the game, but there's really like no value add in terms of celebrating that game incoming. There's really nothing in terms of like fun artwork of Mont Leonis with Final Fantasy 13. Any character from there, like there's not enough of the intertwine and overlap to really make it feel like it's coming into the game. And I'm using the bar that I've seen other gotcha games do that. That I always reference Nikkei, but that's one of them does it very, very well. That they intertwine the characters in such a way that it feels like they're a part of it, and the collab doesn't do that. And so I think it's a big miss that could be worked on. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 100% agree. Like even like you said, the home screen, there's really nothing going on there. They did kind of try to do it one time, I think, with Final Fantasy VI. They kind of had the airship in the background chasing one of the bosses,
That's right.
one of the dragons in the air. So that was kind of a cool touch, but yeah, the depth just is non-existent at this point, and it makes it feel like there's a lack of effort, especially when a lot of these are 100 cost units and very limited, and cost you an arm and a leg to actually pull them. Going back to the point about the actual the gotcha balance in terms of are these collab units the best ones in the game? That was something that we saw kind of more recently this has been a kind of a development over the past year. It's kind of there's a give and take to it. Like you're very disappointed that maybe some of your favorites, like a Squall or like a Zidane, maybe they're not the most powerful units, but at the same time, it does improve the FOMO factor. Where in the past we have, I've known people, I'm sure you've known people as well, that they didn't pull that latest collab unit and they ended up quitting the game. I think Yuna was probably one of the biggest exodus,
Yes.
when people, back before the pity days where people spent boatloads of money trying to get her or Bahamut, didn't get it, and just quit the game because that was, the de facto best unit in the game for a couple of months at that point.
Yep. No, totally agreed. I mean, I think they're not far either. I think it would take just a couple small things to make it feel a little more live, other than just the banners themselves, to actually like add some real content. And whether that's just fun artwork, menu animations, sound effects. Really go down the list and just needs to feel like it's a part of it for that short period of time. But the next one here is the Trials of Reckoning, which I know is a very welcome piece of content for a lot of manual players and people that really like to physically play the game because of the high score element there. I'll kick things off here for this one where, we talk about the frequency. I think this one is fine because they do typically overlap with the collab event, so it is every 2 to 3 months. I will say the duration, I wish they extended it back to the 2 weeks. I do not like the 1 week where, you're doing your Trial of Reckoning, and a lot of times for these high scores, you're constantly changing your Esper boards to min-max the damage nodes, but then Guild Wars going on every day. You got to change for that. If you're doing anything in the duel arena, you got to consider that too. That 1 week time frame isn't enough to really get the full upside of the high score element at the very least. From a farming perspective, they've changed the rewards so that you no longer need like 4 to 5 copies of something, where there was a time early on where the equipment was very good, and it is the kind of thing you might have 3 to 4 pieces of, so you'd farm the heck out of it. It's not the case anymore. The equipment recently is very niche to the collab units. Sometimes they're really good items, and sometimes the items straight up aren't that good either. So even from like a perspective of should you even play Trials of Reckoning, only a handful of people I think really enjoy that high score element. Often I would think because of the duration. I think more people would do it if you had 2 weeks time. And then I know the last thing here that I've mentioned is that although I love the high score element, this is something that I do think where the divisions could improve is in their pre-menu load screen. This is for all content, not just Trials of Reckoning. The enemy info. Trials of Reckoning requires you to constellate enemy weaknesses. You don't know when certain enemies are going to appear on the battlefield. You don't know all their elements ahead of time. I can't do that content without votive stats. Votive calc. I mix them up every time. I can't do the content without votive calc. I literally can't do it. I need to see and I'm not going to go into each individual stage, magnifying glass every enemy, sitting with a pen and paper and write down what the stuff is, and then constantly rerun it 10 times. I'm just not going to do that. And so I wish that this is an opportunity for all of their content that when you load in, when you are in the menu, when you look at the details. And the Reliquiary casts kind of do this, where they say bring lightning units and stages 4, 5, 6 do this and do this. I wish Trials of Reckoning would, with other types of PVE content, improve that quality of life change if they're going to, try to emphasize high scores. I'll stop there because I know I've said a lot, but there's definitely a lot of room of improvement. But it's a good potential PVE mode. Very good.
Yeah, personally, I do enjoy that high score run. Myself, it's traditionally been one of my favorite PVE content in the game, just trying to grind out and get the perfect scores on every missions. I really haven't partaken too much or enjoyed the actual farming element of the week-long farm or 2-week farm back in the day. And your initial point on the length of the event, I enjoyed it much more when it was 2 weeks and you could kind of spread out and have more time to invest into that the high scoring side of it. And it just hasn't been the same, since they dropped it down to 1 week. I think that if they had eliminated the farming component of it, maybe people wouldn't be so tired and wanted to drop the actual length of the event, because I think, the majority of players are only kind of partaking on that side of it. There's not as many players that actually trying to, go on the leaderboards of the high score portion of it. And I think part of that is the actual rewards for becoming a top 10 on the leaderboard, or even the number one, which I personally have done it a few times. You get a title, and you get some extra pulls on the box, which are very whatever. You're not really getting anything good out of that. You're not getting shards. You're not getting pull tickets or anything like that. That's you're getting some very basic materials, which I think if they made those rewards better, maybe people would be more interested in doing it. But at this point, the juice isn't really worth the squeeze for most people when it comes to that. So I think that's a big area of improvement, is the actual rewards for the people who are actually trying to compete in those events.
Particularly when you consider you have to factor in reincarnation. There's a lot of people that are spending a lot of materials to help achieve those scores that they introduced the reincarnation system, and all you might do to enable higher scores without ever really giving the extra rewards for the cost of competing. But I think it's right on the edge of still being excellent. I still look forward to it all the time. And at least the background farm has made the farming a lot easier. Used to be that you'd really just let your phone run 24/7 for Trials of Reckoning. You would anyway for the content in the game, but Trials of Reckoning in particular but at least now you can background farm it. It's not as tedious. Yeah, I don't know. I'm the items in particular. I'm not a big fan of. I think they got a little too niche with the collab units, and even then, it's often not best in slot for those collab units. So it's kind of a big swing and miss for me.
Yeah, it's at least arguable. I mean, at least, you think back to kind of the first few that we had, and an item like the ribbon, for example, was like one of the best evasion items and one of the only items we had like stop and slow at that point in the game. So it's like a very strong item, or like the Shinra bangle, and then there's a few other examples. But now, like you think, last year there was like Kefka's clothes, absolutely like dog
Awful.
shit item. You had the Lena's bangle, or
Yep.
whatever it was. Very good for Lena because they kind of designed her around that. With the garbage casting time, and she's not the same unit without that.
Yep.
So it's good for her and nobody else in the events. They have done better recently. I did like the Tetramaster cards because
Yes.
that had the rare stat of unit resistance, which is kind of universally valuable to any units, on top of having like the kind of the unique effects that were, very nice for Zidane and Vivi and the others. So better recently, and I think the Final Fantasy 13, the Choco chick that's we'll be seeing relatively soon.
Oh yeah.
I think that kind of it's not quite as good as the Tetramaster cards, but it's a big step up from Kefka's clothes anyway.
Absolutely is. And I actually completely forgot about that incoming. We'll talk about that when that drops later. Yeah, that's yeah, okay. All right. Okay. Even recently the near collab. Have you used that item at all?
I've used it on 9S, like just kind of BSing around, because I think that's it's probably one of the best things you can put on him. But other than that, I haven't really used it on A2. So I pretty much always I'm having my uh my marshmallow or survival vest on her. So
Yeah. Yeah, like that doesn't feel good. That, you know,
no.
not at all. But we'll keep going here. The next one is the Tower and Spire types of events, where I to be fair, and in Gumi's credit, I do like want to split these two up personally because Tower is atrociously bad. We all know it is. It's a very grindy. Makes no sense to go through what it does. It rarely repeats. The frequency is infrequent enough, and when it does appear, it was very wonky in the spacing. It's not fun. The reward's never worth it. Spire is markedly better, though. It's not amazing, but at least having it as the 10 floors, it's a lot more than just, oh, it's a wind team, so I'm going to throw ice at it. Like, no, there's still, like, there's a carbuncle in there that you can't just auto it because you're going to kill yourself on it. And they do some things that I think the Spire is a much improved type of content. And I'm not going to lie, I think the titles are pretty badass for, like, top 10 or for the S score and A score. That, that's typically one of the ways they try to reward fans, and oftentimes I think the titles are either a little corny or they'll like pick a quote from a character and it's like not a good quote. Like, I don't know, there's room for improvement there, but Tower with Spire does a really good job with it. I don't know how to improve Spire. I don't know why we don't like it more, because like theoretically it is PVE min maxing content in terms of getting a high score. It just doesn't scratch the itch. I don't know.
I think the titles are very cool, and it's something that pretty much if you invest the time into it, pretty much anybody can get that. Assuming you have a decent account. I think that the leaderboard portion of it is a missed opportunity for them. For one thing, there's people that cheat on there and kind of
Ooh,
get
yeah.
they finish the whole Spire in 60 actions or something ridiculous, and they've got that top spot on the leaderboards. I don't know if there's any policing to that or if those people are getting banned. I see them coming back and able to do it, the next time it comes around. So it really doesn't seem so. But if they actually put some policing there and they put some good rewards other than the titles, like shards, like transcendent mind spheres, things that are useful for players, people might be, more willing to engage with the content. So they have made a step in the right direction with those titles. I absolutely agree. They look cool. They are cool. I try to get them every time as well. I think that the Spire is a huge, vast improvement from the tower, just because you have those bite-sized sections of the 10 floors. That's not something that's going to feel overwhelming to kind of Like the tower was, trying to farm the currency, going up all 100 floors and trying to resetting it and doing it again. Absolute garbage. Um, so yeah, those are just a couple things for me on
I
that.
like it. Yeah, yeah. We like relatively put like a D on the content, but again, I think Tower is really weighing that down. And yeah, it's tough. I really don't know what improves Spire because it. I think if you were to look at things that we like in the game and don't like in the game, I think Spire does a lot of things we like in the game. It requires you to manual many of the stages. If you are going for a high score, you do have to be somewhat methodical about what you bring in there. It's short enough that it's digestible. You're not really spending a lot of time. Every stage feels a little bit different too because it is a different like map and usually a boss and whatever. So I don't mind Spire. I just yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
there needs to be more incentive.
That's a good point too. That might just be incentive. But that brings us to the weekly quests with the brutal and nightmare quests that do come out. I think these are. I think they're fair. I think it's kind of the same idea. A lot of these for the older players, very easy to complete. The grind is really just to get 67 or 63 recipes of or 128 to get 2 copies of something. There's really nothing to them most often. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'll pause.
I mean, with this content, it was like maybe at the second anniversary or thereabouts, they added the additional like elemental missions. They added the high scoring aspect, and those kind of get you materials like the trust stone currency and the gil and magicite. So good stuff all for initially building up your accounts and kind of getting those necessary resources. For veterans of the game, like you said, we're just kind of skipping through these and getting our recipes and getting out. I don't think that they should be like hugely challenging because you want these to be approachable and farmable for everyone. So I think that they're in a decent spot like challenge wise. I wouldn't want it to be anything more than that. um it would be nice though to kind of see more challenge missions like we haven't really gotten those in a while. We used to get these periodically where there would be kind of a more even harder than brutal. I want to say there would be kind of a bigger boss or
Yeah, it
something
was
like that.
nightmare difficulty, and it would be like a stage that was difficult to complete.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything that kind of in the past year or year and a half. It's kind of the equivalent kind of post brutal and nightmare addition to the game. So that might be cool to see. Um, yeah, I think that's probably about it. I think everything else is fine enough for kind of that grinding weekly content.
Yeah, same. I mean, it's not necessarily a place where it needs to improve because, to your point, should be achievable for lots of players. The Far Plane Archive, which we didn't bring up, is a vastly improved thing that didn't used to be here in the past. You were time limited. That's one of our biggest things we've talked about is we appreciate things not being as time limited anymore. Where um, at this point the game's old enough, let people have what they have. It's still going to take some work to get them. It's not just given for free, but the fact that it's accessible, the shop reopens for a lot of those things, so you can go back to the shop and buy like awakening materials and stuff. I think they did a really great job with that. So I think we gave this a B plus overall. Although the content itself isn't very engaging, it's one of those the rewards and like the opportunities that it opens for people. Definitely a nice thing.
Yep.
Yep. But that brings us to multiplayer, which we could probably do a whole segment on this because multiplayer is very different today than it was early on, where early on multiplayer was like a must for completing much of the content. The upsides of efficiency for getting materials, like right now, you can just background farm something overnight and you get it. But that didn't used to be the case. And so, for the interest of time, you would join a multiplayer room where you get bonus drops. If you're a leader of the room, you get increased drops of things. This is a interesting one because it is still technically, audible. Not all of it's manual. I'll get the ball rolling. This I actually don't know if multiplayer is fun for the average player anymore because I've heard too many nightmare stories of hosts being a little too picky in terms of like I didn't have exactly this, so they kicked me. And the auto clickers make some of the rooms very difficult too, where the timing of like people button clicking and macros break and things do weird stuff. That with the background farm, I don't know if it's necessary like it used to be, but it's certainly a thing you need to have in the game. I just don't know how you'd improve it because I know right now it's room for improvement.
I think like the initial launch of the multiplayer, that functionality is seems antiquated today, where initially we didn't really get free energy pots, and energy was much more limited in general. We didn't get the missions where they would just hand out, 300 or 400 energy a day, on top of like the energy pots. So, kind of farming those multiplayer rooms for, especially for free to play players. I think it's still something they probably still do to some extent, but probably not to the extent that, even Wales back in the day used to be farming those multiplayer rooms. And that is not really a thing other than like getting your mission rewards every week at this point. I think that they need to retool multiplayer, and what I would do is look to those special events that they've had with like the big boss events, like against the Realm Scourge or like the Moraga dragon or whatever that we had to kill, and take that and run with it and make that like a monthly thing where there is like a big multiplayer raid that happens every month where we have to get in there. The rewards are compelling enough, like those events were.
Yes.
Maybe they don't need to be 100K Visior, but maybe 10K Visior or 5K. People would still be interested in trying to get that. Make it a monthly thing that's kind of a fun event that you can go into the multiplayer, use that aspect of the game that is already built and already there. And build something around that. I think it seems very easy to do.
Yeah. No, I agree. I completely agree. I think that's the way to go because right now the farming aspect of multiplayer is a little antiquated. I know people still use multiplayer for raid, which we're going to talk about next, as a system. But yeah, multiplayer in general, a lot of those stages are dead too. That if you join an older stage, the activity isn't even there to say I want to complete something later. You have to go in Discord and find a party, and that's well and good too. But again, it just isn't a compelling type of content for PVE.
Right.
No,
It's not fun or challenging in any way.
no, no. But brings us next to the raid and the raid revival. And I'll actually let me quick pause here because I want to make not an announcement, like a talk to the people watching this video. I know you and I, again, we're day one players. Our accounts are fully built out. We have every unit you could ask for, all the vision cards, all the trust stones. I do wonder, like, this is one of those moments where I question myself on being in touch with the player base, having a pulse. Like, maybe a lot of this PvE content is still challenging for people in ways that, like, we don't really recognize. That being said, we are on Discords often enough that that does not seem to be the case. That we're seemingly not in the minority, but please, like in the comments, I would love to hear feedback right now on if you guys still like those brutal stages, the nightmare stages. Do you use multiplayer? Like that's what I think is a great opportunity for us to kind of get some community feedback too, where we don't really talk about that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
But yeah, raids and raid revival. I'll let you kick this off if you want, talking everything about that content.
Yeah, so I mean, raid is kind of just like we were talking about multiplayer. It was very much absolutely needed when the game started. You think back to like the chocolate and white marshmallow raids, where if you didn't have Lucia, like you couldn't even beat like the higher level bosses. Like you were just dead in the water. So you just needed the 4 Lucias, and otherwise you didn't get your Alex ring or whatever it was that
Yep.
you were trying to grind for. Um, so that design was very terrible and felt very bad, I think, for most players. If you didn't have the latest unit, you were just, couldn't do anything. These days, at least, we're more mature. We have a higher unit pool. They've also lowered, the difficulty and level that the boss can get up to. My so that's all fine. I think that's better. My biggest problem with the raid at this point is, first of all, like you don't really even need it to be multiplayer anymore necessarily. Like if you're a veteran, a lot of us can just solo those, which definitely hurts like some of the players that can't, because we're obviously not involving ourselves in those multiplayer rooms. And maybe some of the more casual players that are in there, they're having that same thing, like I was just mentioning with Lucia. If the proper unit isn't coming in that they can beat the raid, they're going to kick them out, and that problem that you were alluding to earlier. So I don't know. It's hard to find that balance where the content is engaging, but at the same time, just not a complete snooze fest. Um, I don't know. My other big problem with raids is the procking 10 of the raids, within the story, and then kind of going in there, farming out your 10, going back. The kind of switching in between the two modes has always felt terrible to me. I would much rather just give us the orbs, give us 10, to start the day. We can farm our 10 and then they refill, over 10 hours and get you back up to a full bar. That's the way they do it in FFBE. It works perfectly fine there. Why don't they do that here as well? I don't get why we need to go proc our raids. It's a very bad design.
That's a very good point. I think it's a fantastic quality of life, and those obviously there's a couple of those that are pending. We're just eagerly waiting for them. Yeah, I don't have a strong criticism of this per se because I do enjoy trying to figure out how to solo some of these bosses. Like there's a fun theory craft aspect to that, and I think the rewards are worth it. This is one of those times that even if it is a slight pain point, you're grinding for something good. So there is a return on investment. You feel satisfied for what you get. When you do a raid and you can now get a third Alex ring, or now you really needed it for an evade meta. Like I think there's a level of satisfaction that comes with that, and there's enough coordination in discords and publicly that I do still think there's opportunities for casual players to get a lot of these items, which to your point you didn't used to. You needed the best unit, but now you probably could get carried by a couple people. So I don't have strong things to say about the content itself. I think the content's actually okay, but you're right. The quality of life stuff has to happen because it is a pain point. Well, plain and simple.
I would also like raid revival is kind of its own thing. Like, it works like similar to the raids, except it's just multiplayer only. But I would say, regarding raid revival, the frequency of it is very, very lackluster, where this thing should be something that pops up for players every 1 to 2 months, 3 months at the absolute most. This thing, we don't see it more than 2 or 3 times a year. That's absolutely horrible for players that have been coming into the game on some of these events like Final Fantasy 13. Their accounts are just completely unable to compete, even on the mid-tier level of the game because they aren't able to get in there and farm this. There's, maybe even something they could put into the Farplane archive that has a key system to it where they could access the raid revival at any time through various keys that would be given out. I don't know, but something has to be improved there so that the newer player or mid-tier, more casual player can get up to speed and help us replenish the top end of the game and get their accounts up to spec. Because 2 or 3 times a year for raid revival is just not cutting it.
Yep. No, totally. But on that next topic here is the guild raids, and I will absolutely let you take the reins on talking about this one. I know this is your favorite content. You are one of the best in the game in playing with the guild raid here. What are your thoughts on the status of that currently?
So first of all, it is probably my favorite PVE content. I always love min-maxing and leaderboard aspects. That's why I loved the Trials of Reckoning as well. It's why I really took to guild raids and kind of the theory crafting and kind of getting those perfect chains and the positioning and all that stuff to let me kind of geek out on it. And that part is great. The frequency on it, we see this, 2 times, maybe 3 times a year. I think that it's something that it's a really nice change up from working with the guilds specifically on Guild War. I would like to see even more content, even beyond Guild Raid, where we're working collaboratively as a guild on something that it's not, regular Guild War PvP. Yeah, so I mean, I think that like a monthly or even like every 2 months would be too much, but like once a quarter, I think at least we should be seeing a guild raid. So that, yeah, I think they could also very much improve the rewards as well. The tickets that you get from kind of clearing each phase of the bosses. Maybe it's good for some players out there that are, that aren't veterans, but I think for a lot of us, the stuff that you get there is not very good at all. Throw some transcendent mind spheres in there, throw some, 10 pulls in there, stuff like that. I think that those should be improved greatly.
Yeah, totally. I'll put a screenshot in the edit here. I have all the tickets from those. I've never spent a single ticket because it's literally worthless to my account. I might have like thousands of them at this point. But I do love that kind of content. The only thing I want to see change potentially is the fact that it still overlaps with Guild Wars, where it's very difficult to the point of Trials of Reckoning. If you're changing Esper nodes for every single kind of game mode, you might forget it for something. And I know we talked about this with the new Truststone update recently, that you can change the toggles by game mode. We don't really know where guild raid falls in as to content type. It's technically in the guild menu, so does it count as a guild setting? Because that would be catastrophic for me if your Guild War Trust Stones were in the same type of content as the Guild Raid, and I would like to see that as a quest type. We haven't seen Guild Raid in the game since this Trust Stone quality of life upgrade, so who knows how that would actually play out. But I know for me that was a big pain point, that for many of the guilds that Guild War is a top priority. Guild Raid was very cumbersome to have to do because the Trust Stone management was very difficult. The timing, the Esper nodes, there was a lot to play with back and forth. So whether they maybe do it during like a limited Guild War week instead, where the difficulty is a little bit reduced, and although there's Viz on the line, maybe that's not a good idea either. But I just think sometimes that the Guild Raid overlaps too much with the Guild War and can take away from it.
I've said this before, but I wouldn't even mind just getting a break from Guild War for that week while the raid is running, and let the guild focus on that content, because there is Viz on the line for Guild Raid.
Right.
There is, for the top placements there, you can earn some Visior. So it would be, twofold. I mean, not only are you able to focus on the Guild Raid, but you are also getting a break from that daily PvP that, some people, they absolutely would like to see those kind of breaks built in, more often.
And I'll say one very nice thing about Guild Raid that I don't think we've said so far, and just look at the content type. Spire might be the only one where this is true. I'm a huge fan of any kind of content that lets you use characters that you don't normally get to use. Um, when you're playing high in PvP, this is true for Arena, for Free Match, for Quick Pick, for Guild Wars. You're always playing, like top meta units. Even in this limited Guild War, the cost restrictions aren't always such that you're like right now in our limited Guild War, strike meta is still the thing, just because of the way the cost goes. The exceptionally powerful thing about Guild Raid for me is that you can use units that you never get to use because they obviously have a niche toward this kind of thing. And so I love that kind of content. And that's one of the reasons why we love the WDL. And Gumi, if you're watching, it's a draft league that 40 of us have created. K Sean runs it, and it's we changed the cost of the characters, and you can't do mono elements, a whole bunch of things. But the bottom line is you get to use units you really never get to use anytime else, which is very rewarding, particularly as a veteran player, because you hate to build up some of these units and then you never get any bang for your buck on them. You never get to use them, and if anywhere, PVE should be the place where you get these opportunities to use them. And Guild Raid was really one of those like last bastions of places where you could use a Luartha or a Howlet and actually like do something cool with them. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely, 100% agreed. I mean, finding kind of the hidden potential in some of those characters that don't really see use elsewhere is one of the more rewarding aspects to it. Finding the 4-hit chainers that like the quad shot superstars
The
and
Winter
things like
Ramada.
that.
When have you ever used
Yeah,
Winter Ramada except for Guild Raid? Never. Winter Moshri, same thing. Never. That's it.
yeah.
You know,
So yeah, absolutely agreed.
yeah. But next is the selection quests, where this came out a long time ago. They released, a unit at a time. It's technically like freely acquired units, free to max, even the reincarnation, free in the sense that like the mind spheres are given to you. You want to talk about this one in terms of challenge, rewards, how to improve? What do you think about it?
I'm pretty favorable towards the selection quests. I think that when they were initially introduced, the challenge was much more. Obviously we have access to Dream Awakenings now, and job updates, and even like a bunch of free MR characters that are like UR quality, compared to like a lot of like 80 cost units in the first 1 to 2 years of the game. They have drastically reduced the challenge of the selection quest, which is good on one hand, because I think for a lot of players they were maybe too hard, especially those players maybe didn't want to invest the resources to completely max out and take units to level 120 that are just MR quality, because there's not a there's not a ton of other use for them in the game, unfortunately. But I think for the players that did invest into it and kind of go deep into that mode, I think it was fun. The rewards were decent. You get quite a decent amount of Viz actually, and you get I think like a 10 pull ticket. You get the unit obviously, and their equipment as well. If you go take it all the way to selection quest 15 for each element. The units, unfortunately, they don't really have the same place that they did maybe a couple years ago when they were first introduced. They're 80 cost units. They don't have limit bursts. Um, if you compare them like amongst other 80 cost units, are they better than many of them? I would say still yes, at least some of them. Some of them are actually quite good. Some of them are useful even in like chaining and things like that, like Moraga and some of these. But I think at this point in the game when we're, firmly in the 100 cost era and, even like above that with huge power creep here over the last 6 months, these units just aren't the same allure that they were, back then. So yeah, I don't really know how you would improve it because it's just aged content. Um, maybe like these units could be improved in some way, and maybe you could give them a limit burst. Maybe you could, um, I don't know, get some other skills for them, so improve them in other ways. But I don't know. We'll have to see what they do with it.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, to me, the challenge, it is very challenging. I'll say that much for the average player. There's certain bosses where it's like you can't clear the stage unless the boss is disabled because that's their one ailment weakness, and you know that Eileen has to say I'm making this up, but you know what I mean. Like there are certain conditions that very specific to clearing, and so there is a challenge aspect to it. Even myself, I needed Royix videos on YouTube to clear them because like some of them I just no idea. But the rewards I think is where I think you hit on the head. There are a lot of really good rewards. I do like the selection quests in philosophy for newer players coming in that there's a type of content they can acquire UR level units, but I've always lamented the fact to your point that in order to clear it, you need to like max out your MR units and these lower rarities that are just straight up bad investments of resources. The fragments of thought and awakening materials are just not worth giving to them. I know in our earlier recording you talked about this. The antlers was a big one. Very difficult to gatekeep them. I would like to see these units improved. That makes it worth it. The Reliquiary quest with Veritas of the Wind obviously is a fantastic example. He might be a little too overtuned, so there's a fine line for what you get for free. But I think making sure that those units are worth the time and effort spent is a really good way to do it. And the fact that they already give you the Mind Sphere certainly like alludes to inflating their strength, where you can potentially max reincarnate them. But still, I think that's where the area improvement. But I think we went with a B with this overall. We were pretty happy, all things considered. I just really think it's some of these units are huge swings and misses. Some of them are great, but some of them are like horrendously bad. Like I've never even like maxed them because I know they're horrendously bad and nigh unplayable. If you know what I mean.
I think to improve this, like at this, like at where we are in the game right now, we're starting year 4 in the game. Gumi absolutely finally needs to release the Blossoms of Paradise for the individual rarities, because that is the disconnect right now for players that and sort of raising those lower cost MR units. They don't want to invest those blossoms or even some of the other awakening resources that for some reason 4 years into it are still gate kept, like the fragments, like the prisms, etc. Those low level rarity, don't get why they're still being gate kept when we're this deep into the game. It just makes it so much harder for the game to be accessible for newer players and trying to get their account up to snuff and being able to actually do what they want to do, which is compete, in PvP with, some of the more, entrenched players.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, but not far off. But the legendary reliquaries, which is kind of similar in regard in terms of the rewards, it's kind of similar to Spire in a sense too, in terms of how you get through it. I'll kick this one off. I mean, I know the challenge and fun aspect is certainly there, where it's difficult enough. You can auto many of them, but not all of them. There's a couple that still require fair amount of user input. The rewards are stellar, which makes the content worth it. It makes it fun, and just because you get certain pieces of equipment doesn't mean that you'll suddenly be broken and kicking everyone's butts. But you need that motivation, I think, for some kinds of content like this. Sometimes it can be kind of frustrating to go through like 9 stages and find out you lose on the 10th stage and you have to do it all over again. Some of that doesn't feel very good. But overall, like this is 2 thumbs up. I think we gave this an A minus in the early consensus, and I don't think there's really any improvement. I think they're nailing it in terms of the equipment, and now there's already +1s of the equipment, and now there's Veritas of the Wind, who is a stellar unit associated with it. Love it.
I think this is like the shining example of PVE content that they've developed for War of the Visions. The other stuff we've talked about, there was some decent stuff like Selection Quest. It's decent. The trials, it's meh. There's some highlights. There's some good and bad, I should say. You know, in a lot of the other stuff we've talked about. This, I think, there's really only good that you can say about it. The challenge is there. I think that it's fun. You know, I think that kind of building the teams. They kind of give you the preview as well that you can kind of use as a guide in terms of like to your point earlier. Um, the rewards I think is what kind of really transcends this mode, because if those rewards were there, I think suddenly everything else starts to fall apart. And I think they can kind of look to this. You get amazing equipment, you get nice Visior, you get scrolls, you get all these things. And now you even kind of get, unit resources with like the Veritas of the Winds kind of thrown in there as well. So I think, use this as your blueprint for future content. But really, if the rewards aren't there, like I said, everything else kind of is all for naught.
Totally. And this is a type of game mode where I have been using characters that I don't normally get to use. So this is another, again, under that umbrella of why I like it. It's because I get to really use my what I have available to me in ways that I normally can't. And so really like that aspect of it. But that brings us to our final and perhaps the worst PvE content in the game. I'll
So
pause.
fun to end on.
I'll pause for anyone that wants to guess what the worst PvE content is in the game. The Beast's Den and the Esper fights are horrendously, terribly useless, bad, easy, poorly executed, no replayability. I could keep going. Where do we even start on this?
I don't know. My experience with the Beast Den was being a very new player to War of the Visions and being an avid cabbage watcher, very, very early on in the first, 1 or 2 months of the game, and him kind of touting this Beast Den Esper fights as like the incoming PvE content that we've all been waiting for in terms of difficult fights. And I remember very much looking forward to them and them finally being released in global, and it being just an absolute joke, in terms of the difficulty just not there, like the nuance and the interest of the fights non-existent, the rewards nowhere to be found, and other than just awakening the Esper, which is okay, that's fine, but what else am I getting here?
That's not a reward, it's a necessity. Like you have
Yeah.
to. You have to awaken them.
So like everything that we said was great about legendary reliquaries, this is just the exact opposite. They really haven't done anything, in terms of the Beast Den. And it's unfortunate because there is potential there. Like, this should very much be a section of the game where you go in and have a challenging fight. Maybe, the first couple of stages or whatever are just to get your awakening material, and then you can be on your way if you want to. But, maybe if your power level of your account is there, you can then enter a more challenging fight, which, has nice rewards. Maybe it's even a take on like the guild raid type Esper fights that we do, where there can be a very high HP pool, like in the millions. And we can even like practice like some high chaining in there and kind of high score runs. There's a lot that they could do. I mean, the infrastructure is there. They just have to kind of build the missions around it. It seems like a no-brainer there that they have very much untapped potential that they could look to there.
Yeah, this is one that has not aged well at this point. Like the Esper Magicite is so much in abundance. We don't get Espers fast enough to use the Magicite anymore. These are one-time stages only that you never have to play again once you've awakened the Esper. I completely agree. This would be a great opportunity to implement something like the guild raid mechanic of killing a boss down, because it would I keep using this phrase, scratch the itch for those that want to play that kind of content. You could easily repurpose this. I still see this as opportunity too, as ways to like expand the Espers themselves. Where right now we've gotten the SP potions as like a way to like build out some of the nodes. But I do like, as the game gets into this stage of the life cycle, the idea that you make things more widely available, and if you want people to min max them, you build them upward by like challenging stuff, challenging things, or pay to win. But that doesn't feel good either. So I'm not saying pay to win, but I would have liked these Esper fights to be the kind of thing where like you have to go to these Esper bosses and like beat them X amount of times to do certain things, and the rewards you get you can reinvest in the Esper themselves and maybe build them up. We've joked before about like maybe like an Esper reincarnation system where it's like very minor, not a lot, but you know what I mean, like some stat increases. Maybe you get some SP that you can suddenly build out the board a little more. I feel like there's things that this could be repurposed to kind of make the Esper more of like on a system that's alive. Maybe you unlock, I don't know, really anything, but like this is bad. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it has its own section in the Farplane menu. Like, it seems like they had some hopes for this mode at some point, that they thought this was going to be like a main feature and component of the Farplane. But you just go in there to, when you get an Esper, you complete the 2 missions or whatever it is, and then you never go in there again. So it's just like, it's very lifeless and hollow in terms of like an actual feature and mode in the game currently. But you have all the infrastructure there. It seems very easy to me that you could take some of these ideas. I very much like the idea of, now that we have the SP potions, maybe there's a new, more challenging mission that's in there, that's a reward.
Right.
And so, yeah, definitely take that feedback and give that to us.
For sure, but that covers at least 99% of what we consider all PvE content. And I know at this point you're probably all sitting here being like, wow, these guys like hate the game. But it's really not the case. We do enjoy most of this. We obviously complete it, but it's the kind of thing where, like, you know, as a tactics lover, as a tactical game player, I don't think this game is in that same realm of like a tactical RPG like it used to be. It's still relatively there, but I think there's still lots of room for improvement. It does feel very turn the wheel at this point, which makes sense given the age of this game. They're not reinventing the wheel for a 4-year-old game whose player base has dwindled, and you know, like there's a business model, so we understand that aspect of it. Obviously, that's why PvP tends to be one of the most popular things, because it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving in terms of like engaging content and like theory crafting and really like seeing results after doing work. But yeah, that's PvE in a nutshell.
I think like 4 years into the game, a lot of these modes are showing their age, and a lot of them are things that were just bad from the get-go, like the Beast Den, like the tower was another big example. A lot of the other stuff is more or less fine, but maybe at this point it's just feeling long in the tooth. Maybe just the rewards need to be improved. Maybe the modes just need a little bit of an overhaul in terms of like adding additional stages, more depth or challenge. Um, but I don't think that they're that far off on a lot of them.
Nope.
So hopefully, maybe as we're going into year 4, some of these modes can start to get some attention.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's all we have for now. That's really what we wanted to focus on for tonight. You know, relatively light week of content, but we're hoping to do this kind of thing again. Maybe not every single week, but we're going to try to go down our checklist where we're going to go through different kinds of PvP. I know we wanted to talk about like a unit building state of the game, and I'm sure other things will fall into that umbrella. But yeah, let us know what you thought. I know this is a lot of talking tonight, maybe more so than what we normally do, where we do some replays and other more fun stuff. But yeah, that's all we got, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important feedback for Gumi to get. So hopefully, Justin, if you still listen to us, pass on the main points here to the dev team. Maybe we tried to be very constructive and realistic in terms of the suggestions and actually the honest feedback. So hopefully some ears are get put on it. And yeah, thanks for listening, and let us know what you guys think, and any ideas for improvements in terms of what we're doing as well. Definitely let us know.
Absolutely. But that's it for now. Good luck pulling the Fang Vision card tomorrow for those who are. And we'll talk to you all soon. Have a good night, everybody.
See you next time.